All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Breakfast with Realtor Champions. I'm Angie Hedgepeth. I'm your Government Affairs Director. January, welcome to this crazy, rainy Monday. Glad you could join us. Our January champion is Representative John Zoka. Representative Zoka is a retired Lieutenant Colonel of the U.S. Army. Representative John Zoka is once again serving his country, this time as a member of the North Carolina General Assembly. John is serving his third term representing North Carolina House District 45, which encompasses Fort Bragg and much of rural Cumberland County surrounding Fayetteville. Representative Zoka was born in Ohio and graduated from the United States Military Academy at West Point with a degree in engineering. He went on to earn a graduate degree from the University of Texas at Texas in Operations Research, a field combining mathematics and computer modeling, which is used for allocating resources and solving complex problems. Representative Zoka is one of us. He is a member of Longleaf Pine Realtors and has been a realtor champion for us for many, many years. He owns and operates Certainty Mortgage. Representative Zoka has helped you with numerous realtor issues and realtor victories. He has sponsored and passed important bills such as health care, historic tax credits, solar energy, tax structure changes, and the important NCDOT roads database. He is also working with the state regarding our complex Gen X water issue. Please also welcome your Longleaf Pine CEO, Zan Monroe, who will be facilitating the Q&A this morning. Grab your favorite breakfast and your cup of coffee, and let's sit back to enjoy some great conversation. Welcome, Representative Zoka and Zan. Take it away.
Doing the slide out there. Morning, John. How are you, sir?
Yeah, great. Happy to be with you on this rainy Monday, and I have my coffee right with me. So,
Everybody's got their favorite beverage drink. I always, when I see you in Raleigh, I call you Representative Zoka. When I see you at our Association of Realtors meeting, I call you John. So, which would you prefer this morning?
I'm just not that formal. John is just fine.
Well, you are one of us, and for those listening, the list of your decisions, and we have worked with you over the last couple of years, and your decisions are made from the basis of a business owner, a person who is in the real estate industry, and that's why we love working with you. So you represent us in the State House, and so tell us what positive or negative impacts you see for the 2020 NC General Assembly. What's going to happen? What are the good things? What are the bad things? Your take.
Well, let's start from the political side because just like Congress, it is all about politics. I think everybody on the call knows I'm a Republican, which you got to pick one or the other. In the House, we went from 65 elected Republicans to 69. A veto-proof majority is 72, which we're not there, but we're much closer than we were last time. In the Senate, they went from 29 Republicans to 28. A veto-proof majority is 30. I think, and that's only significant in the fact that I think everyone's aware that the governor, who is a Democrat, did not sign the overall budget that we passed, which was very disappointing to me, as I had been able to put in over $130 million for much needed projects for Cumberland County, and ended up we didn't get that. So I think in Governor Cooper's second term here, and with the numbers the way they are in both the House and the Senate, that there's more pressure for both sides to actually negotiate and compromise and get to an overall budget that will actually pass and be signed into law. What we did the last time was we took the budget that the Senate and the House had made, and we took pieces of it and we passed, I think it was either 8 or 9 mini budgets. So when it was all said and done, about 92, 93% of the overall budget was in fact passed and signed into law. But the things that weren't signed into law was teacher pay raises, the benefit spending. It's not really pork barrel, because when you have a government entity that continually runs surplus after surplus, there's two ways to give that back to the people. One is to lower taxes, which we've done multiple times over the last several years. And the other is to fund what have been unfunded important projects locally across the state. So pork barrel, there's a difference between that and pork barrel. Pork barrel, I say, is when you're spending money that you don't have in excess and you're just actually spending your children's and grandchildren's and great-grandchildren's money in the future to pay for something, which is what Congress likes to do a lot. So on the political side, I think we're going to see more compromise. I think we're going to see a budget. The two big things, or the one big thing really that overshadows everything that we're going to be doing is the COVID crisis. We have passed along a lot of the CARES Act money, or all the CARES Act money that the federal government sent us. As we're all aware here, not necessarily in our business, because frankly, I had a banner year last year in the mortgage business for the company I work for. It was the best year the company I work for ever had. I know a lot of realtors that I work with, best year they ever had. So, well, we haven't seen it. We all know that there's a lot of people who it wasn't the best year, and a lot of them are still unemployed. So my priority is twofold. One, to get people back to work. And how do you do that? You do that by not picking winners and losers. If we can allow people to go into Walmart and Target and Lowe's and every place else, and we're shutting down mom and pop places, we're picking winners and losers. And that's not right. And when I say we're, I'm meaning the state, because that has been in the governor's orders. Legislature doesn't have a say in that. So getting the economy back to where we were before COVID came, and then getting needles in the arms to get more people vaccinated, which will assist that. And again, that's not a legislative function. That's Secretary Mandy Cohen at DHHS. It was their executive responsibility to come up with a plan. It's been not that great of a rollout across the state, although I will give props to our own Cumberland County Department of Health for the way they have come to do things out at the Crown. If you hadn't seen it, it's pretty amazing. As a matter of fact, it's so good that people from neighboring counties are coming here when they have these open clinics. So anyway, it's a little bit of politics, economy, COVID, and like most politicians, I talk too much, so I'll take a breath.
Well, that's yeah. I got involved in getting my vaccination last week, and it was quite a good system. So, I would have to agree with you. Picking and choosing, these businesses can stay open and those businesses can't, has shut down our economy and has destroyed complete sectors of our economy. The restaurant industry, hotel industry, they're suffering terribly. The real estate industry has done quite well, but you know, we should not be picking and choosing who gets to stay open. Like you say, the checkout person at the Walmart has touched every human in our city over a weekend. And you know,
I know, and that's, I get the fact. I mean, COVID-19 is a serious pandemic, and we have to take it seriously. I think we all know somebody who's either had it or unfortunately has passed away from it. So I don't make light of it, but you cannot, in my opinion, you should not punish the hardworking taxpayers of the state by arbitrarily deciding who can open, who can close. I mean, if I can put a mask on and go into Harris Teeter or Food Line, I can put a mask on and I can go into other places and do things. And quite frankly, I think we've all been to restaurants and seen what happens as soon as you sit at the table, everybody takes their mask off. So there are things we need to do. And, you know, it's just excessive government regulation, which is another thing that I'm against. So we just need to open the economy up.
Well, in the name of safety, we have lost our civil liberty.
That's a whole nother discussion. And
I
I would tend to agree with you on that one as well.
So let's talk about the real estate industry. Let me get a little more specific in regards to rentals and evictions and the relief mortgage, that sort of stuff. We get calls all the time regarding rental evictions and relief from mortgage with small landlords. So can you tell us the role that you have with relief efforts? Can you give our realtors any advice on these COVID-related regulations that say, you know, the tenant can't be evicted if COVID?
Right. I don't know if I have any advice, but I can give you a little perspective of some things I personally have tried to do. Last July, August, whenever it was, when we got the CARES Act money, I had actually authored, along with a lot of stakeholders, it was House Bill 1200. It was taking $200 million of the CARES Act money and was going to put that into three things: helping for foreclosure prevention, that was about 60 million, utilities, people not paying their utility bills. At the time, there was over $240 million of unpaid utility bills across the state. That was back last summer, at the end of last summer. I know that number has only grown. And then the rentals, I had calls from people who own thousands of apartments to people who own one house or one apartment. So and there's about 100 million for rental assistance for people who lost their job, about 40 million for utility assistance. In the back and forth of the final CARES Act, that was approved up to about, it was included in the bill up to about 5 minutes before the bill was finally approved and voted on. It was taken out, and that money was used to provide $335 to families that had children in school to help them with their internet costs and computer costs and things like that. And I'm not going to say that was the wrong decision, because there's a lot of low wealth families who, when forced with children getting on the internet to go to school, they simply didn't have the resources. And yes, the school system, our school system and others bought PowerBooks and all that stuff, but you still have to be able to hook up. It's been a huge challenge, to say the least, to get the right equipment to kids and then get them to sign up. It's just, which is another reason we need to get people back to work. So we don't have to subsidize children staying at home and getting a substandard education. Not substandard because of teachers, just substandard because of the way it's being delivered. And that's, my kids are all grown, but every person I talk to who has young children in school tells me that it's absolutely an awful way to learn, and their kids are falling behind. We've got A students that are now C and D students. And we've got some students who, I'm not sure what the number is, but there's a number who've never signed on line once. So that's what I tried. That didn't get passed. What's coming up this time, we'll have to see what the relief bill looks like from Congress, this latest tranche of money. What I would do this time, and what I've been in consultation with other folks in the House with at least, is the foreclosure prevention. For the most part, in my opinion, it's being taken care of by the private sector, where they've been doing loan modifications and taking 3, 4, 6 months and moving it to the end of the loan. There are a number of lenders who are just doing a loan mod and saying, well, you don't have to pay for 6 months. And as soon as 6 months is over, you have to pay what you owe, which is, in a way, and I hesitate to use this phrase, but I'll use it anyway, it's almost like predatory lending. Because if you can't pay it now, how are you supposed to save money over 6 months to pay it? Thankfully, I've only run into very few of those situations in my position as a mortgage lender. So the utility payment thing, more people are in fact paying their utilities. We have had at least 2 municipal utilities across the state go into receivership that they had to have somebody take over. Now, these are small town, but still, we got to be concerned about them. PwC, they're owed a lot of money, but they're not about to go into receivership. It's a well-run organization. Duke Energy, as big as they are, it's still when you're providing a service and you're not getting paid for it, it still has an impact on them, as well as Dominion up in the northeast part of the state and the co-ops. So If we get that money, my recommendation is the rental assistance where the most of it needs to go. We had come up, actually the plan that I had in the House Bill 1200 didn't pass, was going to utilize nonprofits to help get that out. And there were error traps in there, or fraud traps, if you will, to prevent people from applying for that really weren't qualified. So hopefully down the road, we'll be able to see that. One thing I have seen, and probably no surprise to anybody who owns a rental house, is I've seen a surprising number of people, when the lease comes due for renewal, people are not renewing it. They're just putting the house on the market, which then the renters have to go out and find someplace else to live. Long term, when we get past this, my biggest concern is people who have been adversely affected, haven't paid, I think they'll have a challenge in finding some place that'll take them in, because when you pull credit, well, you didn't pay 8 months the last place, we're not. So I think we may have potential for a crisis down the road. I don't know that there's any way to solve that legislatively, because people who own private property, you can do what you want. You don't need government to tell you have to take a renter or not. But I see that as probably a looming crisis, if you will, down the road at the end of this year, possibly next year.
The biggest problem we see is the money went to the tenants, but the landlord may or may not be able to get hold of it. And if you can't evict and you can't collect your rent,
right,
that falls back on the mortgage company, which falls back on the mortgage-backed securities. It'll back its way into our economy without any question.
And you're absolutely right. And the plan that I came up with took that into account, and the payment wouldn't go to the tenant, it would go directly to the landlord to prevent that from happening. Because I'm not saying people can go out and buy big screen TVs and new cars, but I'm not saying they're not. Money has to be sent to the appropriate place, because you're 100% correct about, people still got to pay their bills. There's no, you got to pay the mortgage. So I get how important that is and how serious it is. Doing everything I can to help that legislatively up at Raleigh.
One of the questions we got at the state of the real estate market that I get anytime we're talking about the economy of real estate is there going to be this huge wave of foreclosures coming down the road that dead real estate market? And I cannot see it, and I can't find any economist who can see it.
Yeah, I don't really see that either, Dan. Like I say, most lenders, they don't want to put themselves in the position of having large portfolios of foreclosed property, because, I mean, who does that help? That doesn't help anybody. So they'd much rather do a loan modification than foreclosure. Now there will be there's always some foreclosures, just because that's the way the world works. Personally, from everything I've read, and I stay on top of the mortgage industry fairly well, I read the updates every day, I don't see that happening, but some of that will depend on what other policy changes come out of Washington, D.C. as well.
Well, and part of our research shows that the median days on the market for a house in our region is 7 days. So if you're in financial trouble, you can put it on the market, get it sold, get it paid off before you go into foreclosure. The only thing that would lead to foreclosure would be inactivity on the owner's part. All right, so change gears on you a little bit. Let's talk about DOT and the road system. We keep hearing there's severe shortage. Do what?
You're asking me all the hard questions today, I'll tell you, but that's okay.
I get to some fun. You want a fun one? We'll stop.
Yeah, we'll do a hard one next. That's good.
So DOT, lack of money. We didn't drive our cars all summer. The gas tax wasn't collected. DOT says they're in a shortage. There may be some pilot programs coming up for tax on mileage, or how is DOT going to recover? Are we looking at gas tax? What are we looking at to keep our roads?
That's a great question, to which there is no easy answer. Let me give you a number here. I'm starting my 5th term here, and in the 8 years that I've been up in Raleigh, you want to take a guess at how much state and federal money combined has been put into roads, construction and or repairing of roads in Cumberland County, just Cumberland County?
No clue.
It's been over $1 billion in the last 8 years. Yeah, $1 billion. And I tell people who say, well, yeah, I know, it's amazing. And it's not just the bypass that goes through Fort Bragg, but you look at the number of bridges that have been replaced, the number of roads been resurfaced. And I know that people weren't happy with putting the medians in on Ramsey Street. And they're not happy with what's going on Rayford Road. But when you can decrease, T-bones by accidents by 40 to 50%, it really benefits everyone. So $1 billion, over $1 billion in the last 8 years. Now, DOT 2 years ago mismanaged to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, money that was under their control. The legislature went back in. We gave them I think it was close to almost $500 million to keep our road construction going at the pace that it needs to go at. So it's kind of like first aid. The first thing is you stop the bleeding, then you start the breathing, then you figure out what you're going to do to get the patient well. So we stopped the bleeding legislatively. We put some strict controls on DOT. The state auditor also agreed with the legislature that DOT was out of control. So they are doing a much closer look at DOT to make sure they don't mismanage the money that they're getting from the taxpayers. But now, you're absolutely right. Driving less, how do we make that up? One of the particular challenges that North Carolina has in DOT funding, and also in tax policy, is that matter, is, I ask this question all the time, is what's the difference between North Carolina, Florida, Texas, and the state of Oregon? And I'll just tell you the answer. The answer is the other states in Tennessee, basically their populations are geographically isolated. If you think about it, you're not going to drive from Orlando up to Savannah to buy a TV. You're not going to drive up there to fill up your tank. Same way in Texas, big state, the major population centers, interior, Oregon, even California, we're not like that. The biggest population center we have is Charlotte, which is right on the border with South Carolina. So when you look at solutions that may have been used in other states and try and apply them to North Carolina, you have to think about, well, if you're living right on the border, from an individual perspective, it's like, what's in it for me? Is it cheaper for me to drive 10 minutes to fill up in South Carolina or do something down there? We looked at this a lot in all of the income tax policies we're doing to make sure that we didn't disadvantage our state to the benefit of our neighbor to the south. And I love South Carolina, but we need to keep money in our state. So we have a different challenge than some other places. There might be a mileage pilot. I will tell you what's not the answer. The answer is not to increase fees on electric vehicles. There have been a couple studies done on that. That actually, when you look at the surcharge an EV pays right now, the last study I saw was, I think it's about 14 months old now. They're actually paying a little bit more than they should. So, I don't know what it is. We have another obstacle in the way in terms of toll roads, I-95. We can't turn, we have a law in the books that says you can't turn an existing highway into a toll road. And 3 or 4 years ago, there was a lot of discussion about tolling I-95 and this and that. And I was against it then, I'm against it now. I've told you what all the issues and all the problems are. I haven't told you what the solution is. That's because I don't know what the solution is. We have a lot of traffic that goes through the state on I-95. If we penalize our citizens to the benefit of out-of-state people driving from New York to Florida and back and forth in that, then we're unduly taxing our own citizens. So there have been studies conducted. I've looked at this very extensively over the last couple of years. I'm just being honest with you. I don't know what the real answer that's best for North Carolina taxpayers is at this point.
Well, every time I talk to you, I begin to realize how complex your decisions have to be. I mean, I'd never thought about that until you started describing it. If I can get gas cheaper in South Carolina and it's 11 minutes away, I jump in the car, run over there, fill up, and come back. Things like that. The rest of us sit out here and go, why didn't somebody do something? Well, you're doing something. And with your background in mathematics and your engineering mindset, you and I've talked numbers before, and I realize you're analyzing these numbers in depth, and I really want to thank you for that, because
thanks. You know, it's kind of like the first charge of a medical doctor is do no harm, and I would say that the first charge of any legislator or elected official is to do no harm. People have a lot of ideas, like all you have to do is, and fill in the blank. Sometimes if you just take the simple road, it does harm. And I think I'm glad you recognize that a lot of these issues are very difficult to solve. And sometimes it takes a while to figure out what the better solution is. And sometimes with this, there's no best solution, there's only a better solution. But from my viewpoint, I don't want to penalize the taxpayers in North Carolina unduly and reward people driving through the state or our neighbors to the south, you know, by coming up with a policy that looks great, but it's really kind of messed up.
And that's, it's just a complex world. Everything is tied to something else in our world now. You know, gas tax is tied to car sales, it's tied to, you know, all sorts of things. So, well, John, thank you for being here today. Any last comments? Anything that you need our listeners to know about you and what you're doing to help us? I'm going to quote you repeatedly: "Do no harm to."
Well, I mean, that's really true. The first thing is do no harm. These issues are complex, and you know, our local realtors have been very involved in a lot of issues. You know, starting the DOT database, that wasn't my idea. I ran the bill, and that's a good first step. There's still more to be done on that. You know, orphan roads, our local realtors brought that to me. Again, we're making some progress on that, but that's, you know, we still have things to do on that. But just stay active in the process. I'm always open to ideas. You know, all you gotta do is go to the website. Well, actually, I'll make it even easier. Zan, you be the clearinghouse for all the great ideas, and bring them to me, or maybe Angie and you. But the best thing that people can do is to not get mad at the TV and throw things around the house and turn off and become disengaged. In times like this, at the state and the federal issues with everything that's going on, the best thing to do is to stay engaged. Come up with those ideas, make your voice heard. I'm not saying riots, but make your voice heard. If you've got ideas, bring them forth, because most of the legislation that I actually end up passing isn't some brainchild that I had. It's because the realtors suggest this. And, you know, a lot of it is a compilation of people who come forward with good ideas that we're able to put into law and actually make things better. So just stay engaged and don't be put off by all this, use your own adjectives, whatever's going on nationally today.
Well, you remind me of a book I was reading about really smart people, and it is that they gather threads of information from many different sources to weave a tapestry of a picture of what's really going on. And I have watched you in service for your state do that over the years, gathering threads of information to build a true picture of what's going on. And to make a complex decision, you've got to do that. Something else that you have done so well over the years is encourage other people to get involved in the political end of our society. And so let me do a advertisement for something that we're going to run here at the Association of Realtors. Angie Hedgepeth came up with this. We have a candidate training academy. It'll be February 10 and 11. It runs from 10 in the morning till noon. It's all online. It's hosted by us, the Longleaf Pine Realtors, but it's being conducted by the National Association of Realtors. And what it is teaching people who have an interest in getting involved politically, maybe not at the state level, but on the planning board or the school board or the airport commission, or in some way serving their community. It teaches you, you know, here's what you need to think about before you get started. So we would like to invite people. You can go to our website, longleafpinerealtors.com, and find out about that. Got one question from Ron Hartman. If you got just a minute.
Sure.
You got time for one question? Voter laws. Can pressure be put on the commission overseeing election to bring implementation of consistency with law passed by the legislature? I don't understand the question.
I think I understand the question, though, because I know the county that Ron lives in, and it's one that their local board of elections has probably had some challenges in administering elections fairly and in complete compliance with the law. I actually have been in the past, and I think I'm going to be again, a vice chair of the elections committee, where we look at elections laws. There is a system in place from the State Board of Elections that is supposed to enforce those laws, and that is a function of the executive branch. It's not a function of the legislative branch. All we can do is pass the laws, and then they have to be, like many things, they have to be enforced by the departments and the commissions, which are charged with implementing and making sure that the laws are obeyed. That is certainly something that I personally have taken a very hard look at. Because of COVID, let me just give one example here. Because of COVID, we reduced the requirement for an absentee ballot for just one witness as opposed to two. Then and that was a bipartisan agreement. Virtually everyone voted for that in both chambers. And somebody took it to the courts, and the courts were trying to overthrow things in my humble opinion, made up arguments that just made no sense after you have a bipartisan agreement and the governor signs it. So one of the things that we face often, whether it's in election law or other laws, is court challenges. Some of the most important positions on the ballot when you go to vote are, in fact, judges. A Supreme Court, Court of Appeals, District Court judge, Superior Court judge. I mean, these are important. If you get somebody who's ideologically based so far to the right or so far to the left that they're just making up law and dictating law from the bench, that's a bad thing, and those people need to be voted out. That is a problem that we've had. Unfortunately, a lot of these challenges to election laws and things are heard up in the more liberal-leaning sectors of the state. You know, some of the Wake County Superior Court, some of Mecklenburg County. I can guarantee you, because I've been involved in a lot of these things, and in making sure that the laws are proper and that they're so that every vote counts, not every vote, and then we're going to let somebody bring boxfuls of ballots. But the policing of that is all up to the Board of Elections at the state, and we can only put the laws into place as long as they're signed into law, and we don't police it.
Yeah, once it leaves your table, it's up to them.
Well, it is, and it's up to citizens that when they see something that they know is wrong, to report it.
Representative Zoka, it is always a pleasure. Thank you for your time and your service to our state, the community, and the real estate industry. And the only thing I can tell our listeners is if you need a mortgage company, go to see you. If you need someone in the state house, come see you. You're right. Absolutely.
Here. I'm always available, and hopefully COVID will go away sometime soon. I always look forward to the Realtors coming up for Realtor Day. I'm not sure when that's going to be or if it is going to be, but anybody and everyone is always welcome to come see me up in Raleigh, and certainly to communicate with me by email, text, or whatever. I look forward to hearing what y'all have to say.
We'll come and see you. Thank you. Our pleasure, John.
Thank you very much.
That'll conclude our program. We'll see you next time.